I graduated and did go into studio recording and mixing. Also, I actually moved back to Alabama to do that. I had an offer for a small studio that was like a combo with a music shop and coffee shop, so I worked in all three of those things to get going. I started touring with bands. I had an internship at a local music venue, and gigs and everything just spread and grew from there. I eventually ended up, I did concert photography, I did front of house, I did just a little bit of everything in the music industry. I did radio, television, all of that. I did work a job for a while doing editing dialogue for national car commercials. So around 2014, if you heard any Cadillac, Buick, or GMC commercials, that was my work. Everyone in Canada, in the US, and Mexico at that time, I touched. Um, but after that, I think it had been mentioned somewhere, but there's a family business that is a flower shop that became up for grabs. And during the time that I was doing those car commercials and all the music industry stuff, I had an hour and a half commute to any of these gigs or jobs each way. So, um, being family business, being attached to it, this being a lot more closer in a good stable job and not constantly hustling, gig working, I took on the flower shop, um, continued the music stuff on the side, and worked and ran this business like through the pandemic. It continued to grow and was a great business, but I wasn't as passionate about running a business. I was getting the creative side, but I did not want to do all of the management, all of the ordering, all of that stuff. Um, and I came to a point where I realized that my friend Ryan Stunkel, who is the team lead at Blip Sounds, he and I went to Full Sail University together, graduated together, and we've been like really great friends ever since. And all this time, he's been in the game industry, and I'm like, wait a minute, you have the same degree as me. Like, how are you doing that? Like, tell me more about that. And of course, like post pandemic, being remote or like living where I live, remote options, it became like so much more available. And I really saw that that world had opened up to me. And so I started talking to him about it. Um, Realized I had kind of the audio background and like that to stand on. And so I was like, what else do I need to know? And so I dove into learning Unity, Unreal, made some small games myself, started doing redesigns and just doing everything I could to learn. At some point decided to just sell my business, set myself a time frame. I was like, okay, I've got a year to find work while I'm selling this business. And so set myself a deadline, and it eventually worked out that Blip Sounds had, it started off like very small things that he kind of passed along of like, oh, I need a hand here and there, and it just grew from there. And things timed out, and now here I am. And that's my long-winded version. I guess it could be a lot more detailed, but uh,
No, I
yeah,
think
that's kind of where we're at this point.
yeah, no, it goes to show like how many twists and turns your path can take on the way into game audio. I feel like that's true for so many of us, especially if we haven't gone to school for it, which I mean is only now more becoming more so of a thing. Um, yeah, no, so that's
Yeah.
really cool to hear. And you've been with Blip Sounds for how long now?
Around 3 years.
Okay,
I
okay, yeah.
did start while I was still running the flower shop, so
Mhm.
um, yeah.
So what are you up to these days that you can talk about within Blip Sounds? Or and if you can't talk about the project, sort of what's sort of your day to day at the moment with them?
Um, so I will say, uh, we were able to share Dead as Disco. That is a project I've recently worked on. It is a game based on like the idea that you are in a music video and you are fighting along. It's not a rhythm game where you like have to be able to stay to the rhythm to fight and play. It's just more about like the experience that's happening around you while you're fighting. And so that has been a very interesting challenge on the sound design side to not only support and go with the music, but not like distract from it since the music is the focus of the game. Um, Aside from that, there are that one's kind of on pause for me because they're progressing more with funding and things like that at the moment. Um, and so right now I'm working on some more short-term contracts, and my day-to-day would be like typically I will say like um at one point I kind of had myself labeled as a technical sound designer, but I am really like we are like full service hybrid sound designers. Like we're really just sound designers, but our um we say full service because we record source material, we design assets, we integrate middleware, we go in, we implement the sounds, and then we also build audio systems. And so we do the full thing. If if the team wants that, we do some more like precise things if we're hired for something more specific. But a lot of the smaller indie teams and AA teams, that's what they're looking for from us.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just so like interesting to hear about your path in the industry, and I think it'd be interesting to hear, what you would say some of the more important things that you've learned are having worked so many different types of jobs in the music industry.
Yeah, it is all about like I think the game industry relates to the music industry in this aspect. It's so much about who knows that they can trust you, like who knows your name, who knows what kind of work you can do, but more importantly, that they can trust you to do things honestly and just do your best and just be a good person, kind of thing. Because music industry and game industry, both like music industry, for example, I never run lighting before, and I ended up touring as a lighting designer just because they were like, we need someone, and we know you, and we know you're not gonna like act a fool around the other bands or things like that, just for an example. But I think that's like one of the biggest thing is like really understanding the networking side of things. And Full Sail was very good about driving that into us too, and very much push and encourage working on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that trust is kind of the most important and hardest to gain currency in the industry. So yeah, really, definitely important. I mean, how would you say that relates to the work with Blip Sounds and kind of finding clients with Blip Sounds? As a company that at this point is established with lots of really great games. You are you kind of doing a lot of outreach to developers, or at this point are developers kind of like reaching out to you guys?
A little bit of both. Obviously, Ryan has a very established reputation, and so a lot of people do reach out, but they may be specifically looking for him because he's the one that they know and trust. And but at times they trust him to also be like, okay, well, I'm not available, but Jess is, and like you'll love her, she's great, or whatever, and he'll talk me up. But um, we are all Dietrich. Someone mentioned Dietrich in the chat. Ryan, Dietrich, and I are. There's only the three of us on the team as the core members, and we all are equally like going to conferences, staying active. Well, I'm probably the most active online, but we're all sort of like doing our own reach and then sharing it amongst each other.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like it's definitely sort of like an equal partnership situation rather than like a hierarchical sort of
Yeah,
arrangement. Yeah.
it's really nice in that respect. Ryan sees us as equals. We very much respect each other's opinions on whether it be sound or business choices or anything. Like we very much like we want to be on the same page, and most of the time we are. And so I'm very grateful to have them as my teammates. They're great to work with.
Now, before Blip Sounds come about, like how did you end up getting into how did you end up getting like freelance gigs and such, or and how did like post production come about as well while you were still working while you were still working in studios? Was it all sort of based on outreach, or did those kind of come to you?
The post-production thing was really interesting. I'll start there. I was interning at a local music venue, and they happened to have office spaces within that music venue that they would rent out to people. And so there was like a little radio station there and a few things. And I happened to walk by, and this guy had like just a ton of instruments in his office. And I was like, what does he do? And I just kind of like wandered in there. And he was a composer. And at this time, I actually have no idea what he was composing for, maybe TV or something. But one of his friends happened to be there, and we all got to talking. And that friend was the IT guy at the production company I ended up working for. And he was just like, we're looking for an audio engineer. And it just snowballed from there. Like I got the interview and happened to get the job. And another really interesting thing about that is Ryan and I's other good friend at Full Sail, Alex Zahn. When I left that production company, I called Alex because they were like asking me for references. And I was like, Alex, are you interested in this position? And he lived in Cape Cod, Massachusetts at the time. And he was like, yeah, I actually am. And he came down, interviewed, got the job, moved to Alabama. Now he's married with a house and a kid, staying in Alabama. So it can go so many ways.
That's not the most common move from Cape
not.
Cod to Alabama, but that's awesome.
But it just shows too, like how how you can help someone else out. They may help you out. You just never know when the opportunities might come up. I'm sorry, I actually forgot what the second part of that question was.
Oh no, that was similar. It's like, yeah, how did you then come about sort of freelance projects once you decided that game audio was where you're going to put your focus eventually?
So the way it worked out is I'm pretty sure all of my projects have actually been through Blip Sounds, aside from a few that I've picked up locally. Just because naturally Ryan became my mentor, and then also because we've known each other so well for so long, when he started needing extra help, once he realized I was serious and once he realized that I could do the job, of course, he put me through some tests for sure, and then threw me in the deep end a couple of small projects and was like, okay, you're ready.
Were those overt tests, or were those like, oh, can you just make some UI sounds for this project for no reason?
No, it was like, I need you to, and I'm sure this isn't like super hard, but he was like, I need you to build a duplicate of Flappy Bird and then come back to me. It was just like very specific, like things like that. Like learning the engines was his main concern.
Nice, yeah. But again, if you're supposed to be like equals in the partnership, it makes sense to throw some gigs the other person's way and seeing if their workflow matches with yours and whatnot. Yeah, it's really cool.
He's also very good at like honoring what works naturally for me too, and like not forcing me into a certain type of workflow.
Mm.
How big did you feel like that learning curve was? Like how long do you think it took you until you felt comfortable with all of those new skills?
I will say a couple of years. Like he really believed in me and stuff, but like last year I think it was last fall, I got in a project that was just like slightly above my skill level, I think, but also I could do it. It was just a constant ebb and flow of like, oh, I need to learn this to be able to do this. I need to learn this to be able to do this. And so it wasn't just like doing the job, it was like constantly educating myself alongside it. I'm feeling comfortable now to the point where most of the time I'm not having to question myself or like constantly like learn something new to be able to do it. I mean, there's the game industry, you're always going to be learning, but still there's like a lot nicer balance of it for me now. I had to push myself pretty hard for a while there though.
Yeah, and it's really cool what you're describing, where you said that Ryan kind of like just sort of went with the stuff that you gravitated towards. What was that journey like? Do you feel like you, ending up more on the technical sound design side of things, like how did you kind of figure out that that's more the path that you wanted to take?
So I'm the one that kind of put myself under the technical label, but we all equally do sound design, technical,
Mhm.
and programming if necessary, or it's always necessary for us. But yeah, so I did start leaning towards that though, because like I think in like the things I was learning and the things I was putting out there as far as publicly, like the tutorials I've done with the Unreal Fmod stuff, because I guess what really like sparked my interest in it is initially going into sound design, I was like excited about the sound design part, but I was scared about learning the technical stuff. Like, can I do it? Is this going to be for me? Am I going to like this? Do I have to learn this? Because I know a lot of sound designers want to just do sound design and not do that. And Ryan was like very much insisting, whether I was working for him or not, he was like, you really need to do this. It's going to be really important for your career if you can do these things. And so I dove into it, and the more I learned, the more interested I was. I felt like it was just so like it was like a rush to figure out a puzzle, like to put the pieces together and like actually like things work the way you intended them to do. And so I think just the fact of how it was something new and exciting to continue learning on, it just like really made me push towards it. And I do think at this point I've invested so much time learning the technical side that I really need to like work more on my sound design chops now. Because originally the audio side was my comfort zone. And now I'm like, okay, I'm like pretty balanced, but like really need to like up my game on my sound design, like more complex designs.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. Since I started at Sucker Punch, I've opened Reaper maybe every other weekend.
Yeah, you got to
That's how
refresh.
it goes sometimes. Yeah. Now, did you have while you were learning everything, did you have like some favorite resources or some resources that you found super helpful in getting you started, or referencing as you went along?
um, these may be obvious, but also people may not be aware that they're out there. But Unity Learn on their site is actually fantastic. Like it's so structured and so guides you so much from like very, very beginner to like this is what each window means. This is, what all these tools are, to, building full games in it. And so that was an excellent one. I did the WISE courses, and then from there, just kind of figured out Unreal and FMOD along the way in projects. Um, and got to the point where also there were not many resources for either of those out there, like for game audio, especially using FMOD with Unreal. My first game project was FMOD and Unreal, and I think that's what sparked that too. And so I was like, I can't find anything out here about this. And so as I figured it out, that's when I started doing my beginner course on YouTube, um, which I have not touched in a while, and it's very much just the start of things. But I think it has helped a lot of people kick off at least.
Really, I
Just
think I
grabbing
find
just grabbing the link for the playlist here.
Okay.
I think I
Yeah.
find with Fmod especially there are just not as many. There's certainly more now. Like your course and Sergio Ronchetti is also putting out a bunch of
Mhm.
like really interesting stuff on Fmod, and it's so great to see people start to make more tutorial stuff. Just because I know that when I was starting with Fmod, I had like no idea where to find anything.
Mhm.
So it's really really awesome that you're doing this work. Do you think that game audio education is kind of an avenue that you're thinking of pursuing further?
I do think so. The team at Blip Sounds, we have been discussing this lately of because Blip Sounds used to do their videos too, of like how can we continue this? Like what would be the most valuable for the community at this point? Yeah, it's just kind of up in the air right now of how and when we can do this, and what exactly to do, but we definitely have the interest. I personally would like to get back into it, and I'm just my preference. I'm leaning towards going to a blog format because of like Alessandro. I can't think of it. Alessandro Fama, is that his name? He has a blog that did help me a lot with using FMOD. or I think he might do some WAS stuff too. But he has a blog format, and I actually prefer that because you can like just breeze through and glance for like what you're actually looking for. You're not having to like watch this long video just to find the very specific detail that you're trying to find. Especially once you start to like be like pretty autonomous or pretty independent on like being able to do these things yourself. But you're like, oh, I have like this one catch I'm trying to figure out. And so I just really love that format, and I do not like editing videos. I'm like leaning towards that personally. I don't know if other people feel like that would be something that would be helpful to them, though. I would love to hear from everyone about like if Alessandro's blog is helpful, and if you'd like to see more of that out there.
What I find
Yeah.
helpful about formats like blogs too is with everyone's workflow being ever so slightly different, I feel like everyone fills in each other's gaps by sort of like offhandedly talking about solving a problem that maybe other people have had but didn't know how to ask for. And I think that's a huge factor in having sort of written content available somewhere, especially when it gets into areas that aren't really super well documented, like why is this spatial audio, for example, or using the source code, for example, that sort of stuff. Yeah, I feel like the more content there is, I think, yeah, the better for sure.
Yeah, we would love to continue to contribute to that. I will say Sergio, what he's doing is really great, and I love how like concise and straightforward his Fmod videos are, because you can look for like the exact feature that you want to know more about, and he has them broken down. He's a really cool
Yeah,
person.
I was like searching for something the other day, and like one of Sergio's videos came up, and it was like 2 minutes long, and it was like perfect and really, really concise. It was great. I think another great thing about blog posts, and maybe this is more true for ones that are a little bit more rudimentary, but I think that there's a lot of info out there that even is kind of basic info, where it's you really have to dig at like the forums to find you know, oh, we're adding this to the next patch. It's so when when you make a blog post about that, it can be really helpful for kind of getting business. And I've definitely heard of stories where people have kind of gotten that through their blog posts, where just from like an SEO perspective, if I'm like a dev who's dabbling with Fmod, I might look up like this thing that I don't know how to do, and a blog can kind of help establish you as an expert and direct people towards your site. So I think that there's kind of an added benefit there if you're thinking more on that level of things.
That is a really good point. Yeah, I like that you point that out.
Yeah.
And I agree.
And it's all these idiosyncrasies that are hard to learn about, like Unreal, for example. If you import animations, you have to duplicate them in order to be able to do anything, like to manipulate them. But like, you have to go through like Stack Overflow to find out about it. That sort of stuff, I think.
There's so
super
many
valuable,
things.
yeah.
So many things in the game projects, like it's like Perforce, for example. Like you just have to like really know its quirks sometimes, and like how it interacts with Fmod or WAS. Like you just have to, and it's not things that really make sense for them to document or anything. It's just like you have to know almost like how your project works with it. And it's just kind of funny.
Yeah, it's like you thought you deleted a comment, but you actually broke the entire game.
Yeah.
That may or may not have happened to me a couple weeks ago. But...
Happens to the best of us.
Yep. Noah, you were saying something?
Oh no, I was just laughing at your comment. I think it's funny. Neha Patel was doing a micro talk at GDC this year, and she was talking about like not being too worried about screwing up, and she gave an example of she broke the entire game because she did something slightly wrong in Git, but it was it was okay, and they resolved it, and you can break the whole game and you'll still be fine.
Thank goodness for source control.
Yeah, but please tell people about it. Don't just sign off for the day. And then come back to like 25 Teams messages the next
fire.
Now, Would you say these days you have sort of a favorite part of the job, or when it gets to like a certain stage in the project, you're like, oh, this is like my favorite part when it all comes together? Would you say there's something like that for you, or are you equally excited throughout the process?
I think I'm equally excited because I really enjoy having the blank canvas to start with, but
Mhm.
then I also enjoy like, okay, we have sound everywhere. Like the bases are covered. Now I can like really improve upon things. Like I think those two stages at the beginning of those are very exciting.
Yeah. Do developers then, would you say, bring you on fairly early in the process, or that could be the entirety of Blip Sounds or whomever they specifically choose, or have you sort of been brought on, yeah, it's like later down the line historically? What has your experience been there?
I've had both happen. I've had people bring us on too early to where it's like, oh wait, we might need to get ahead on art, or we may need to call you back kind of thing. Or like there even be like, yeah, just not really much to work on. And so I've had that
Mhm.
happen, and then I've had the other end of the spectrum of like, okay, there is a lot to be done. Like I've had people come to me of like, we had a sound designer at some point. This is what they did. We want to
Mhm.
release in a month. Can you fix everything? I'm like, oh, sure.
But yeah, there's a good point to be made there that there can definitely be a phase where the audio team kind of spins its wheels a bit when there's like no art, no narrative. There's like
Mhm.
some mechanics on like a, yeah, with some like default asset store models or something. And so sometimes audio can in fact be brought on too early, although I feel like in the general scheme of things, people tend to err a little bit on the side of too late still.
Mhm.
um,
It's great to at least be
yeah.
having the conversations early.
Mm.
Even if you're not like hands-on on the project, it's like as long as you're at least involved in what's going on, where the direction's going, like that's definitely a nice thing. Um,
Right, yeah. But you might not need like an audio programmer and an art and technical sound designer on staff right away,
yeah,
potentially.
they may say they want audio to direct the art and things like that, but it's not really gonna happen that way.
Yeah, we just made some cool sounds for something.
Yeah.
See, come up with like characters based on these sounds.
Here's some very conceptual stuff.
I think speaking of bringing in audio people, typically too late, but sometimes too early too. What would you say is the main challenge you have communicating with devs? And do you have any kind of major pet peeves at this point working with dev teams?
Um, I don't know if I have any pet peeves. I think the biggest thing is just like, and this I guess is a human thing and just like a natural thing, but like people trying to give feedback on sound and like describe what they want. But of course, like everyone has their own interpretations of this, and so that can be a challenge, especially for people who are not sound designers. But I think when it becomes a problem too is like, or when I do have problems communicating is when people are not necessarily wanting to be honest and like confront us about something of like their needs or like something they would like to change or whatever. Yeah, if they're like not upfront about it, and then later on they're like, "We wanted this," and we're like, "But you didn't tell me."
Oh
That's
yeah, we never liked this.
yeah, yeah. It's like I could easy fix, I'm happy to change it.
Yeah, as painful as feedback can be, I feel lack of direction is even more so
Mhm.
when you realize you've been going down the wrong path for months at a time.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes developers they just don't know what they want until they hear things to compare to,
Mhm.
which is reasonable. It's just
Yeah.
we
I think that's kind of a blessing and a curse of audio, where it's like everyone has opinions on visual art. Like literally everyone has something to say about it. But
mhm.
then sometimes with audio, it's like, yeah, sounds like an explosion.
Yeah.
Cool. That sure is a car.
Or yeah, or giving feedback before there's like really anything to even compare other other sounds to compare it to, because like the soundscape, it's so like whether a sound is good in a game is based so much off of the other sounds within the
Yeah.
game. Um, it's so important, like how things work together. And trying to explain that, because like when it is super early and they're like, oh, we don't necessarily like this sound, and we're like, let's get a few more in, like let's get some things in,
Mhm.
see how they work together.
Now, would you say that you have sort of a favorite niche within sound design? Like, is there like a category of sounds you love creating? Not the most, but that you specifically enjoy a lot to work on?
I really like things like doors and chests and like tactile, very like things I can go very detailed with. I do really enjoy that stuff. I like UI when I can. I'm I don't do a lot of sound design, so like when I can do like a very like natural sounding UI, I do enjoy like
Oh yeah.
trying to like pull little details out and like make cool sounds from there. I
Nice.
worked on a
Same.
horror. Oh, you like that stuff too?
Yes.
I worked on a horror game at one point, and I just loved making like super creepy, long, screaming doors. Like,
Gotta love a creaky door.
Meanwhile,
mhm.
meanwhile, the rest of game dev hates doors with a passion.
I don't know what your problem is. I'll throw you 400 doors
Come on.
if you want them.
Cool. So, how much input would you say that you generally have? So, like, how much would you say that you over at Blip Sound get the authority to act more as audio directors?
Typically we each are in an audio director type position. Because oftentimes I've actually only had an audio director a couple of times. Oftentimes we're on smaller projects where we are the only audio person on the team. Um, and one of us takes the lead on the project, the other we're each other's like support system for feedback or whatever it may be. But yeah, usually one of us is just totally taking the lead. So we're also not really directing anyone. I will say, like, I wouldn't, I guess, call myself an audio director because there's not usually anyone working alongside me um, to be directed.
So, how much would you say that you are kind of executing dev vision versus kind of like having that discussion with them or pushing back maybe against what they think that the audio should be like?
Um, I've worked with teams where they're just like totally trusting and they're like, yeah, go for it, whatever you think. Like they don't even want the conversations sometimes, or they may have like one or two notes that they'll pull out. But uh, there's not often that I've had someone request something that just totally disagreed with it. There's maybe been once or twice, and it's not been like any type of serious confrontation or anything like that. But I think most of the time they are pretty reasonable about their request or like pretty understanding about my reasons. It's usually just a casual collaboration though. Um, yeah, there's times too like I might be like, okay, we'll try what you're suggesting, and then I'll be like, I tried this, this doesn't work. Do you want to listen to it? Like this is not working for me though. I don't think we should do this. But at least like letting them hear their idea too, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, it also goes a long way in building trust too, that you're not like shoot them down for bringing an idea to the table, but at least to hear them out too is worth a lot, even if you know that it's not necessarily going to be conducive to the overall overall experience.
Yeah, because I've also really enjoyed like when teams want to involve me and like asking for my feedback for other things like art and gameplay and stuff. Like I think that's really nice to be able to work on teams like that. So I want to support that same like openness on the audio side.
Yeah, you can function as like a little mini playtester at times.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes whether you're prepared to do that or not, they're like, "Oh yeah, we do this every week for 2 hours." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Now, when you're working on a project, especially if you're in sort of the sole audio person role, do you have any best practices for staying organized, both for your assets, but also what needs to be done by when, what's critical for release, what can maybe wait or um, be deferred to later? Yeah, do you have anything you can share there?
Uh, Yeah, I will say, like, I think it has evolved with every single project I've been on, and so like I think it's constantly changing. For me, at one point I had started out like using Trello boards to like keep track of all of the sounds that I thought needed to go in the game. Like I would just like make a list. That way I would be like, okay, I see that. I'm gonna do it later. I've kind of like ditched that at this point. Um, Now I just like I start with like whatever the most important things are in the game, like to begin with, like filling out ambiances and all the player interactions, footsteps, whatever like the biggest like forefront uh like sounds in the game would be, or like the most important mechanics of the game. Um, as far as like other organization, like within projects and stuff, I really like to be organized, and like I'm really big on like how I spell things, how I like label things. And like one of my latest, well, not latest, but like how I like typically work now is my Reaper sessions. I use, I I'll like create a Reaper session and I will structure it like my Fmod session or like my Y session is going to be. And so like I'll create the base Reaper session and then like I will use sub projects for like sound effects, and then like within that sub project for sound effects, I'll have one for like weapons, and I'll like go down the hierarchy the same way I would do a Fmod project. And doing that, I've found super helpful on like really understanding and knowing where things live constantly. Like you're not worried or you're never like searching through your Reaper projects trying to figure out like where something is to go back to it, or like same with your F1 project. And then same thing with naming convention. I name them exactly the same way. It would be like SFX underscore weapons underscore. And so everything matches up and like is conformed. And I have been really happy with that workflow. And that's something I've consistently kept for probably about a year now.
Yeah, I think the file naming there is needs to get a huge shout out because I feel like that's often neglected but can make your life so much easier. In our case, it dictates. In our case, the file name literally dictates what happens to the file in the middleware too. So it's like,
Mm.
if you get that wrong, the sound's just not going to play, basically.
Yeah, asset and events names match. I will say that too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I
I've
think
gotten
that's a
into
good
WAS
shout.
projects where other people had created to begin with and was trying to find like where all these things were connected, and none of them named even close to what each other, like the asset compared to the event and stuff. And I'm like,
Just audio
it
oh
was a
one
struggle.
underscore 24
Yeah.
is weapon sound. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another part of it is you are opening up the you're just opening it up for if someone else needs to come on the project and help you at some point or take over at some point. Like you're doing the nice thing by like being able to pass it along to someone who doesn't know your brain, and they can like look at it and pick up on what's going on.
Yeah. And I think it's ideal to or important to establish those practices no matter how small the project is, because they're only going to become more important the bigger the projects get, to the point where you can just like mess up everyone's work if you just like toss your files wherever you feel like.
I used to be like, oh, I can just name it like, oh, doorknob, like, and just, like kind of vague stuff. But you may end up with like 50 doorknobs by the end of the game or something. Like, you just never know. Um, so I think the more specific you can be, the better.
Cool. So I want to take things back way to the beginning of our conversation when you were talking a little bit about the three of you going out to conventions a lot. So I have a couple questions about that. So when you guys are at conventions, are you kind of in finding work for Blip Sounds mode?
We are basically in make friends mode. Um,
Uh-huh.
we we spread out. We also hang out together, but yeah, it's just more about like seeing who we meet, seeing where it goes, making friends. We are we'll see where it leads, but like ultimately we do like to find work for Blip Sounds rather us as an individual, if that's what you mean.
Yeah. I guess I'm just. I think that makes so much sense, and I totally agree with that approach of like, you don't know where work is going to come from, and so I think the best approach for your mental health and for finding work, kind of goes together, which is just going and meeting people and making friends. Um, so, do you have any conferences that you particularly like going to? And if so, do you have any tips for attending?
Mentioned conferences, but GDC this year was actually my first and only conference I've been to. Ryan and Dietrich have been to tons of them, so I'm just now joining that group. Dietrich wasn't able to make GDC this year, but Ryan and I did it together. But I really enjoyed GDC. I would say um, some of my tips would be like, or some of the things I feel like I should have done better. Maybe this is the best way to share. I think I should have prepared more and like reached out to more people ahead of time and been like, "Hey, I'm gonna be here, and I would really like to see you or talk to you." Like Chris and I, for example, I saw him from across the room a few times, and like we kind of knew each other from Air Wiggles and stuff, and I wanted to talk to him, but like we didn't actually plan a thing, and I actually didn't know if we'd ever get to talk because it just wasn't working out so far. Um, and so and I did end up like planning a few things like as I got there and started feeling comfortable, but I do wish I had like reached out to more people ahead of time because there were definitely still people I missed that I would have loved to meet. Um, and then, and of course, like take care of yourself, like know when to rest. And I think I did like fairly good at that, but still, it's just, I mean, it was like 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. every day for me, probably.
Wow.
And well, yeah, I think I may have got up earlier than 8, but and I somehow missed every morning audio meet there was still. I just could not get up and get going. But I did really enjoy going with the flow though, even though I missed some of those planned events. It's kind of hard to be like staying out all night, like hanging out in a hotel lobby with a bunch of people that like we got pretty close with over the weeks. Like we would like continuously go back and hang out with these people. Um, so yeah, go with the flow, be open to talking to anyone and everyone. Um, I didn't go to a lot of the presentations either. I think I went to there was a concert and then I went to Power Up Audio had a like round table that was cool. But other than that, I just like wandered around the expo and was just felt like whenever there was a presentation, I was like so wrapped up in a conversation with someone that I was like, I feel like it's more valuable and like more interesting to like continue this conversation with this person than to like branch off and like go sit and listen to something. Unfortunately, there's just so many choices to make. You can't do it all. Had a lot of had a lot of FOMO from missing a little indie party that I heard Eric Braun from the Create Stardew Valley was at, but you just can't do it all.
Yeah, you can only do so much. You do so
Mhm.
much every year. But I feel like if you know that you're coming again, you can always be like, "Oh, I'll do all talks this year, and I'll do all networking next year, and I'll mix them up the year after."
Yeah, that's probably a fair idea. Or like maybe uh, between different conferences, you could do that. Um,
Yeah, right.
yeah, and I was a little bit hesitant to like put on all my socials that I would be there too. I don't know what it was, but it was like I guess something about it. I was like slightly concerned for it being a safety thing, but like once I got to GDC and had my first experience there, I was like, oh, I should have done that. Like, 'cause then once again, I
Yeah.
would have connected with people ahead of time.
I was actually surprised by how many people were using the app, because like the NAM show uses the same app, but no one ever contacts you there. But yeah, there was actually
Yeah,
added a bunch of people, and like most of those people immediately came back with like a meeting request, essentially. So like
Yeah,
The app is shout out to the app actually, as janky as it was. It actually worked pretty well.
it actually, yeah, it was very janky, but I did actually like meet up with several people from there, and it worked out very well.
Mhm. And we do have a question in the chat here from Brandon. And we haven't really talked too much about life actually, so that comes at a very good point. What are sort of the creative or non-creative or yeah things you do to recharge and sort of take care of your own well-being?
It's a very good question because it's something I struggled with recently. I had hit a point where sound design was like a drug that no other creative outfit was like really going to compare to. But I have always like stuck with. I really enjoy like going hiking and like doing yoga and a lot of just being outdoors and like exercising and like trying to be away from screens, trying to be away from games for a little bit, all of those kind of things. Um, I since I did struggle with like so I've had so many creative jobs too. Like the flower shop was like I did crafts all day for work. And then like music, and then now games. And so like I literally recently bought like a paint by numbers thing just so I could like do something with my hands but not really have to think about it too. Like after like doing such like deep thought work all day. And so yeah, I'm kind of exploring that again recently. Last week I did take a few days off and did kind of a tech detox thing. Stayed away from everything except for my phone for texting and calling. And I did. I bought a Game Boy Advance. I like went on this like hunt at all of my retro game stores because I recently had like a serious like nostalgic longing for one. And so it was fun to like go out and hunt for one and then have that like without like a backlit screen and stuff and just have like it's almost primitive at this point.
Yeah, remind you of how we got started in gaming.
Yeah. And now
The
now
pain we had to go through.
yes. Yeah, I was like, wait, I thought this had a backlit screen and then I looked it up. I was like, is something wrong with this one? And I found a whole Reddit where a whole bunch of other people thought the same thing. And they were like, did I imagine this as a child?
Yeah, you forgot the you completely forgot about the like magnifier light up attachment
The
you had
little
for your
worm
Game Boy.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was thinking, I was like, my Game Boy Color was like that. I thought like, because something about the Game Boy Advance felt so like out of this world when it came out. I guess it was just the
Mhm.
colors were so vibrant. I don't know. So now
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a used like Pokemon Sapphire or something that's actually in a decent price range. That's my next hunt.
Yeah. There's something so creative about like that era of gaming too, because so much is up to your imagination, and I feel like that's why retro games are still
Hmm.
so so fondly played by so many people, even people who haven't grown up with them. I feel like there's something to be said about the level of abstraction there that really is just nice to go back to from like the hyper realistic open world 120-hour
Yeah,
sort of campaign experiences.
I have really pulled away from bloated games and have like commonly been buying like $10 to $20 indies that I can play in like maybe 2 or 3 days.
Mhm.
Um, and I've really enjoyed a lot of them.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, same. I try to.
Well, so we
Oh yeah, keep going.
yeah, we have a related question from the chat from Hayden, who's asking if there's anything from the games that you grew up on that's still inspiring for your sound designs now.
So from I don't think I've worked on many games that like kind of like coordinate with a lot of the games I played growing up. Because lately I have been working on VR games and like MMOs and yeah, like I haven't really like found that connection yet, but I think one of the games I can't like really point out like specific sounds or anything, but like one of the games that like really hit me as a kid were like the Paper Mario series, Paper Mario's and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. Like those two just really stick with me. And so like anytime I do have that cartoony type style of thing to work on. Like I think I lean hard into that um aesthetic. Um and then probably lean towards, this isn't really as a child, but like I lean towards like Breath of the Wild as um a reference for a lot of things.
That's like the gameplay I put on when I'm working on like organizational work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so peaceful and calming. And then like yeah, there's just so many aspects of it that are incredible. So um I did try to, I was like specifically wanting to listen to the ambiances on Tears of the Kingdom the other day, and then I realized I was like, there's no audio settings.
Right.
I was like, you can't like ditch the music just to listen.
Yeah, they're very little settings in general. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Now there's a very Akash Takar question here, which I really would love to hear your answer on, which is yeah, with how many things you've done over the years, sort of how has your definition of success kind of morphed throughout from, yeah, being in music, doing all the music adjacent jobs, being a business owner, and then going into sort of game audio full time? Yeah, how has that influenced sort of your idea of success?
Yeah, I would say I would say music as a early 20s person. I was very much like I got to work with a lot of cool artists, but very much like all of my success was focused on like who I get to work with and like the names I get to be around and like who, yeah, like it was very much about like I guess those kind of labels and like that kind of stature or whatever you want to say. Um, and like one thing I was proud of too was like I did get to mix an album that Andy Vendetti mastered. And like we never met or anything, but I was like our names were beside each other on the credits on the back, and I was like, that's so cool. But like, and it was just like a random shot that even happened. But so I think it was more about stuff like that as a like younger person. But the flower shop, it became more about like, of course, being a retail thing. It felt like the crowds of the customers and the sales and the success of the business as a whole. Um, and being that I got to a point of the flower shop where I was pushing myself just too hard with that, because like same thing with freelancing, same thing with running a business, a local business. It will take as much of yourself as you're willing to give it. Like there's just no end to it. Like you have to learn to draw your own line and like learn what is worth it to you. And so like I learned all those lessons the hard way with some burnout. And so at this point, with the game industry, like I'm not super worried about like the clout with working on a big game or like I just want to enjoy what I do and not burn out doing it. Like um because it's so easy to obsess over it and like because we love it. Um and yeah, I just think it's at this point success is about like being happy with where I'm at, enjoying the ride.
awesome. So we have one more question from Zeke Bandy, who's asking if there's anything that you're currently playing that you're particularly digging.
Uh there is a game that I learned about at GDC and it just delighted me once I got to play it. But it had been nominated for several of the Indie Game Awards. But it's called Thank Goodness You're Here. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with it.
It's so good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a delightful game.
It's just like it is this it's just a little cartoony world where you are kind of along for the ride. There's actually not a lot of gameplay to it, to be honest. Like you explore a little bit, but I mean, it kind of feels like you're in a British Adult Swim cartoon or something. Like there's all these twists and turns and just yeah, it's just so fun and it was just relaxing and had me just giggling so much. And so uh that was one I really enjoyed. Um and I had not finished Cult of the Lamb, and so I picked that back up last week, and I was like, sound design is so good on this, and there's not a lot of indie games I've played recently that I felt that way about. And I was like, this has some killer sound design, and it's just a fun game. So those are kind of like what I got my eye on right now. Of course, the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah,
The Hobbit.
shout out to Game Boy. Yeah.
The Hobbit was what I was able to grab.
Nice.
And classic Zelda. I've played it a few bit too.
Oh, I think that is it for questions. Yes, Zeke. Thank goodness you're here is hilarious. There's only like one button, and it's like to slap things, and that's how you interact with the entire game. It's really, really good.
And then the slap materials are satisfying too. Like they did the sound right on that too. I think it's Shell in
Yeah.
the pit for that.
It's also funny too, because like when indie games have really good sound, everyone notices it. Like, I mean, like you've probably all like heard about unpacking too, and how many people just like place things just to hear every item on every different surface because it's so satisfying.
It is.
And so yeah, like as much work as it can be, having to be the only audio person on like a 2-digit team, yeah, you can make an even bigger splash that way too, of course, because I feel like the audience there just notices every little bit of love that you pour into the project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of indies, I find the most common thing is they probably just didn't have the budget, things like that, and there's just a lot missing.
Yeah. Or it's like they'll come to someone with an asset list and basically just do that.
Yeah.
I feel like happens a lot of times as well. Yeah, I need a click and a couple weapons. And
Let's get
footsteps
the
would be great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're just about at time. Do you have anything that you want to shout out, and or how can people reach you if they have any questions?
I don't know if I have anything to shout out.
Yeah.
I think we've mentioned so many things here that I hope are valuable to people. The best place to reach me. Oh, you know what? I want to shout out Air Wiggles. I always shout Air Wiggles. I've gotten to know so many people through that. It really made my GDC like such a different experience than it would have before too, because like I spotted people I recognized and was like, hey, like you just had like something to like initially connect with. And it's just like a great support system in general. So that's my shout out. If you want to reach me, Air Wiggles here on Discord. I'm in this group now, so you can find me in the group, or LinkedIn. I'm trying to minimize the rest of the socials.
Yeah, it's probably the healthiest, way to go about things.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Jess. This was really, really wonderful. And I just I have a couple of announcements to make. So first of all, and Jess, if you find yourself at PAX, this will be relevant to you as well. But we are running an event with Audiokinetic at Harpoon Brewery on the Friday of PAX. So you do have to be 21 plus to attend. I was really trying to